surviving to 550 would be a fraction of a fraction. So there you go, David. We're almost certainly well under 1% of all podcasts.
We are fractional. So
Help me with hip hop. Let's get it right. Protect your patience. Day and night. Donna and David, the experts on your side. Help me with hip hop. Let's get it right.
So Donna, guess what?
What?
I'm going to give you 550 reasons why this is going to be the best episode yet.
I don't know. We've had some good ones. I don't know what this one's going to turn out to be, but unlike a lot of people who have scripts and things, no, we have no idea what it's going to turn. We learn what we're going to say when we say it.
That's right.
So here's the 550th time we're doing it.
550th episode. So kind of a little milestone. I'd love to know how many podcasts make it to 550. Maybe I'll look that up one of these years. I had a conversation with the MSP the other day, and I have a lot of MSPs that come our way typically from the podcast. And this guy's like, I said, so have you listened to our podcast? Because he was interested in HIPAA for MSPs. He's like, no, I've never heard of it. I'm like, what? I was like, well, you might want to go listen to that before you decide to get into healthcare IT, because some of the questions that were being asked were things like, can we be HIPAA compliant within 3 months? Can we? I was like, oh, no, not really. I don't think so.
You probably need to.
Yeah.
We need to start with defining HIPAA compliance.
Yeah. And I told him, I said, if somebody's selling you on that, you may want to be a little bit skeptical of what all that is. Cause it's, and then he says, I loved it. He says, but you're going to make this easy. And I was like, no, I am not. This is not an easy process. I said, I will show you how that it is done simply, but it is not easy.
No. Yeah. The easy button. Remember those days?
Yeah. So I was like, I don't think you probably should sign up right now. You need to do a little more homework first. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But today we are going to be talking about GRC. And what I really want to know is how many people out there just do the RC of GRC. They don't even look at the rest of it. And for those of you who don't know, because some people don't, GRC is governance, risk, and compliance. And the interesting part is that the people that even know what the acronym stands for tend to look at these as 3 different things. Are you doing governance? Are you doing risk? Are you doing compliance? When in actuality, it's really a path. It's, let's talk about it. Because you have to have one to have the other kind of thing. But it's a very different way to look at it, and it's really the correct way to look at it. So let's dive into it, because we'll start with your 3 rules of security, because there's also 3 questions of governance.
Yes, indeed. And so, I try to stick with a program. We got some 3 rules.
That's unusual in and of itself.
I know, right? 3 rules of security. Security is not convenient. Security is not optional, but security can't prevent you from doing your job efficiently and effectively.
Right.
So, and we always know that technical people get stuck on 1 and 2, and the users and non-security people get stuck on 3, and all 3 are required. You can't pick just 2 or 1. You got to have them all. It's a 3-legged stool. So we're going to do a similar kind of thing, because governance is all about building the actual structure of this is what makes it a formal privacy and security program. We're going to focus on the cybersecurity part of it, but it's defining clearly who makes the decisions, who decides what you're going to do, what risk you're going to accept, what risk you're going to mitigate, how are you going to, who's making those decisions, and then who owns the process of getting that done once the decisions are made. And then the third piece is, how do we know it got done? That's governance. So somebody's deciding, somebody's owning it, and we know it got done. So if you can't answer those three, you don't have the G. You basically just have RC, and you may be accomplishing maybe just R, the risk part.
Yeah.
Maybe not the compliance part. But if you have the G, then the RC, that's what makes them work. So often people will say, oh, well, that's just policies and procedures. No, policies and procedures are part of actually making sure it gets done, right? And the ownership part. But we have to think of security is operational. It's active work. And if you're doing the risk part and the compliance part, you have activity. But you need the structure, which is the governance part. So security is operational. Governance is there's actually a formal structure that is building and managing it. So, and there's a reason that G comes first. It's not alphabetical, clearly. So it puts into place accountability. It puts into place proof. It puts into place all of the things that you need to properly manage risk and prove compliance. Hence, governance, risk, and compliance. And I think, the GRC, you'll see people throwing that around. Oh, we handle GRC and I do GRC or blah, blah, blah. And then when you ask them to define risk, okay, most people can come up with something. Compliance, that's pretty easy. But defining governance, if you ask 5 different people that are in the field to define governance, they'll all give you something different.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is one of the areas we also see MSP stepping into. We have GRC tools and we have vendors that are telling us we do GRC stuff. And so we're like, yay, another acronym we can do.
Yeah, that's true.
But, we don't really often live in that governance world. We're coming in and we're saying, we'll help you identify the risk. We'll protect you against those risks. We'll help you be able to prove compliance. But we're asking the questions to the client. What are you deciding to do? Who's going to be doing it? And how are we going to make sure that's getting done? Those are things that you are not really offloading onto the MSP. And so am I, as an MSP, doing GRC or just RC?
Well, and see, that's the key. You can't build the structure within the organization that involves accountability. And so often, though, people think they are outsourcing the decisions to you. And that is, the decisions have to do with more than just what software am I going to use, right? What tool am I going to use? You have to have policies, but that's not governance by itself. You need to have committees, but that's not by itself governance. IT tools, those are the operational bits. And so you have to have, this is the thing when people are like, well, just do it for me. I'm like, I am not going to decide how to run your business, but that's what you're telling me to do, right? It's like your statement that you use of, I can't care more about your business than you do, So you have to have accountability, decision authority, own the problem and report and keep up with it. That big picture is the structure that governance represents, which it's also the part that most people think they don't realize that they don't know that they need to do that.
Right.
I think
Yeah,
that's
it
where a
becomes
lot of
an
the
issue.
wheels fall off.
Yeah. Well, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
But oftentimes when it gets pointed out, you don't, it's like you don't want to hear it either. You know?
La, 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 la.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's, the ignorance is bliss, kind of thing, which, I'm a fan of. I'm a fan of being ignorant of things sometimes.
Yeah, the less you know, the better.
Sometimes that is correct.
Just be
Other
a
times
mushroom.
it is no excuse for the law either. So be careful.
Yeah, you got to know. Oh, I didn't know there was a speed limit here. That's never worked as the defense. But overall, I think, and this is where I think a lot of technical people, MSPs, even, people that are just, small businesses trying to deal with HIPAA or things like HIPAA, right? Is that they are looking for the security rule. And we've had so many people say the security rules, and it's not clear. It doesn't tell me what it is I'm supposed to do. And they're looking for it to be the operational part, when actually it's more of the governance part.
Yeah. So it's like, protect the data. Okay. Tell me what to buy, how to set it up, what I should do. Like, no. You've got to figure that out. Protect the data. And they're like, okay, it's too complicated.
Yeah, well, and so you think about it with HIPAA, it's like you assign security and privacy officers. Okay, that's just decision authority, accountability, that's there. The risk analysis and ongoing risk management documentation that is required that you're supposed to do, periodic evaluations, the written policies and procedures, not just that's how we do it. Those are my favorite. When you ask, do you have a policy on this? And they're like, well, it's not written down, but this is what we do. Mm-hmm. Then you don't have a policy. You just have what everybody's doing. It's
all in my head.
Yeah.
It's all in my head.
And if you're not there, it's done slightly different. But the whole concept of HIPAA, like other compliance programs, assumes that there's a structure that will manage this. Mm-hmm. And if you go through and look at all of the things with that perspective and read the security rule requirements and even the privacy rule requirements, it's about having the structure in place where there is actual decisions being made about the risks and problems that could arise based on what we're doing and how we're going to address them. What is it we face, and do we ignore it, accept it, or do we build something to make sure that we mitigate as much as possible any damage? And compliance says, compliance with a regulation like HIPAA says, I have to prove that I'm doing it.
Yeah, because if you can't prove it, it didn't happen.
So the big issue that we always run into is that. And so that's why I wanted to, our big 550, let's talk about something that we haven't really talked about, because that's rare to find something. Oh, and by the way, I did pop into Claude and Chat GPT about how many make it to 550. And they point out that one episode per week is over 10 and a half years without quitting on a weekly podcast.
Yeah.
And we, in May, will be at 11 years. It's not a hobby, and that is correct. Getting to 500 plus episodes is extremely uncommon. And even getting past 100 episodes makes it rare. And the dropout rate is brutal. 47% drop at 3, 75% eventually pod fade, and only 8.5% reach episode 50. So,
wow.
Yeah, and those are just random numbers between the two of them. But know Claude says, no data set I found tracks the percentage that makes it to 50 plus. But if you're looking at the 8.5%, it's saying surviving to 550 would be a fraction of a fraction. So there you go, David. We're almost certainly well under 1% of all podcasts.
We are fractional. So
You're looking at a pool of perhaps a few hundred to low thousands of shows at that milestone worldwide. So
Wow.
There's not one about HIPAA.
Oh, we're definitely the longest running podcast about that. Probably the longest running podcast in other categories.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. So certainly about HIPAA, but maybe other things too.
The longest running one of two goobers talking to each other every week. That's so.
Pull up a table, folks.
So, but back to our governance thing. This is, a key piece. And so many people come to us and say, well, I need you to make sure that I'm doing security, I'm doing HIPAA, but they don't want to do the governance part.
Right.
And when we start asking the questions, and so here's some of the red flags that you're not doing the G, you're doing the R, maybe the C, but you're not going to be successful with the R and C without the G.
Right.
Do you GRC or just RC?
Well, here's one way to understand that. So red flag number one, your risk acceptance is not documented. So we decided that we're going to accept that risk and move on. Great. Did you document that? No.
And why are you accepting it? And what kind of review would you do? Those kind of things.
My favorite is we accept the risk because we don't want to document that we are going to do something about the risk. You still have to document.
And that's what drives people crazy when we're working with them before they get it. Now, eventually they get it and they get on board and they're like, yeah, I know I got to do it. But it's, when we sit down and we say, okay, how do you want to address this risk? Well, you just tell me. No. That's a decision. We can tell you what we recommend, but it's your decision on how you're going to run your business. And that documentation of those decisions is what's key. And, we're trying to get you to do that. And we even do a thing when you do the policies and procedure stuff with us where we basically have it's like a personality survey for your risk tolerance so that we can make a risk statement based on this survey. And by the way, I'm redoing the whole thing, and my team's really happy about that. But part of it.
That brings us to the next red flag, which is not having a defined risk tolerance. So you don't have a framework that you're putting risk against to say whether or not we are going to tolerate and to what level we tolerate these particular risks. It's just, let me see. Let me stick my finger in my mouth and stick it up in the air. See what that feels like. That feels like we should probably accept that one. Okay, that sounds good. Or my favorite is, what do you think?
Mm-hmm.
What would you do if you were in my shoes?
Mm-hmm. I can tell you. Still your problem.
Yep. So have that one. Number three.
I do want to add, there's one of the things in our little questionnaire, and for years we get the same kinds of responses is, when it says, how does HIPAA compliance fall within, your tolerance that you really want to make sure you comply. I'm okay if we're close. HIPAA schmippa, HIPAA doesn't matter. Right. And people go, well, how can you possibly say HIPAA doesn't matter? I was like, if HIPAA doesn't apply to you, because we help people where HIPAA doesn't apply to you. And it's like, oh, it's just getting people to realize that you need to think it through to that level. And and then write it down, which is where you get people that or like owners who, you remember our HIPAA schmippa story, but if you had that doctor write it down, oh, now it's a different ballgame. You want me to write that down? I can't write that down. It's like when I was showing somebody Comply Assistant one time, I was explaining, so every time you do your work, and they're the GRC tool that we use, every time you do, you do the work and you're updating things and managing your program, it documents it for you so that you have this timeline. You can see what's happening. And the guy, dude looked at me and goes, well, then they know I'm not doing anything. Okay, you're not. I want a coffee.
Well, I mean, look at it this. You can look at it this way. At least you have proof that you're not doing anything. So it's like, which way do you want proof to go? But I don't know.
Yeah.
We have that conversation often about defensible and all this stuff, but. All right, so number 3, remediation items without ownership, because you and I both know if it's not assigned to someone who has ownership of that, it just won't happen.
Yeah, the not my job thing happens quick.
Yeah, or the aren't you doing it for me? Okay. Well, first of all, you obviously expected me to do it, but did you ever communicate that to me? That there was that expectation? Maybe not. And that goes not just for your vendors, but even for your internal staff.
Yeah.
Like you have to communicate to them that, you expect this stuff to be done.
And see, that's again, a key piece of what we often see and what OCR mentions is you do a risk analysis and it has the same stuff on it every year. Nothing ever gets fixed. Nothing ever gets dealt with. And there is really no one that's doing those periodic reviews and documentation. We sit down with people and say, okay, we need to set a plan. All right, you're going to get this done. And we're not saying, I will get this done on April 16th, 2026. No, what I want you to say is you're going to do that in third quarter, 2026. You're going to get that. It's going to be completed or it's going to be whatever. You set some guidelines so that you know and you review this and you work the list. And it's like, if you can ever get that light bulb on, it changes everything. So, who's responsible, who owns this is key. But ultimately, you and I both know in small business, everything bubbles up.
Yep.
And leadership is supposed to own it all, right? Who was it? Harry Truman. I had the buck stops here on his desk. And that's technically what you're supposed to do as a business owner. And you see young folks doing it right. And then you see people not so young doing it wrong just as well as the other way around. It has to do with, taking ownership not of each individual task, but as the program as a whole. And the number of times, okay, I know you're going to get this when I say you're talking to the business owner and you're saying, you really need to take care of some of these things that you have really big gaps in your program that you need to fill. No, we don't. No, we're doing all of that. No, you're not. And I've had like really large organizations that I was getting like yelled at that it was ridiculous that a company this big, you're trying to tell me I have to worry about encrypting laptops. We encrypt laptops. We're too big not to. And I went, no, you don't. And it was like, you're treating me like I'm some little bitty something. And I'm like, no, I'm treating you like you're not encrypting all your laptops. And,
prove to me you are. Prove to me you are.
Well, but then the IT director is on the call and I said, hey, Joe, are you encrypting all the laptops? No, we're not. And it was like, all of a sudden, Mister, you're treating me, you know. Oh well, I'm gonna sit back and shut up for a minute.
Yeah.
No, they weren't. But it was a matter of believing, well, of course we do that. Yes.
Mhm.
But if you acquire an organization that's got, 500 laptops that aren't encrypted, how do you correct that problem? And no one was taking that into account. And that was an actual moment where, that you can tell that leadership believes that you're doing the right thing.
Yeah. Well, they're completely unaware of the actual risk posture of the business,
Right.
which is another red flag. Because if they were doing the GRC part of it properly, they would know these things. You know, have these meetings or whatever you have to have in order to make sure that you're aware of what's going on. We see this all the time where it's the frontline workers are well aware of the risks that are happening. And sometimes they're like, yeah, we've been telling leadership or at least middle management, and it never goes up to whoever it needs to, or whoever at the top just doesn't care or something like that. They just assume it's happening.
It never gets the right priority.
Right. I run a small organization, but my comment is always, we don't assume anything. If somebody sends us like, hey, here's a compliance or whatever type of questionnaire for insurance or PCI or whatever, don't just go in and say, yeah, we're doing this, 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 and this. Like I want you to go in and show proof of every one of these things. Right. I understand that there's a 99% likelihood that you're right, but I want proof every single time.
And that's the way it should be.
And every once in a blue moon, somebody says, oh, wow, this actually wasn't turned on, or this wasn't set up the way we thought it was. It's every once in a blue moon, but that's why we do it, to catch those mistakes or something changed that we weren't aware of. Because you and I both know, just because you said it that way doesn't mean it stays that way.
Yeah.
Sometimes an update will change something.
Yeah, the set it and forget it attitude in anything in technology is just wrong.
Yeah. So it's all about prove it.
Yeah.
And prove it over and over again. I think the conversation that has aggravated some people on my team the most is the proving that a device stays encrypted. Because they're like, but we encrypted it. It's encrypted. It stays encrypted. Why do I have to keep reporting that it's encrypted? And I'm like, because we can't be sure that it stays encrypted unless we look and ensure that it stays encrypted. and you know what? 99.9% of the time, it probably will. But the one time in 1,000, something's going to happen. It didn't get encrypted, or somebody unencrypted it. Who knows? But that you just have to keep looking. You keep checking the oil gauge. You don't assume that there's oil in the engine because your idiot lights didn't go off.
Well, and that's another key piece of, you're not checking just to, make sure that it's there and catch problems. You're checking so that you can prove if I lose it, it was encrypted.
Yeah. And it's, if you check it, my thing is, how often are you checking it? So I don't want to check it just once a year, because I want to be able to prove if it got stolen midway through the year. 6 months ago it was encrypted. I mean, you could do that, but for me, it's like, let's shorten that down.
Yeah.
Like, can we do it quarterly? Can we do it monthly? Why can't we? Nowadays, we can do it better than we could before. Used to, we had to literally log in and check these things manually. Now we don't have to do that. We can run scripts and other things to do that. So our reporting / proof cadence has shortened to every month. But again, you still have to prove it.
Got to prove it.
Got to prove it. So the last little risk we have here is security is treated as an IT silo. Yeah, security does that. Security's the only one that does that. They're the only one that knows anything about that.
Yeah.
Part of the reason this happens is, well, I see it on both sides. Sometimes it's that the IT people do that to themselves on purpose. Like, the more I know, the less other people know, the more powerful I am. You can't get rid of me because I know things you don't. And so I see that side of it. On the other side of it, I see ownership saying, I don't want to hear that. Just the whole la, 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 la. You know, every time I talk to you, it's all about risk. It's all about malware. It's all negative. It's all like, let's talk about something I want to talk about.
Well, and
let's talk about growing the business and stuff like that.
The other big thing, though, is everything to do with security is an IT problem. No, it is not.
Yeah. Yep.
Security, clearly, we haven't talked about technology and software. We've talked about all the things that governance has nothing to do with that itself. You have to separate it. I have to have governance structure so that the security operation work I can prove for compliance. And that's why you got a GRC, not just RC. You need to come up with a song for that one, David.
I'll work on that.
Yeah, get back to me on that. All right, let's bring it back around.
Right. Yep, let's bring it back around, put a bow on it. So, number one, you got to figure out who formally approves the risk acceptance. Who's it going to fall on?
Yeah, where does the buck stop?
Yep. And if it's a small business, probably stops at the owner. But the larger it is, whoever it is, like, who's going to approve it? And then, and sometimes this is probably the hardest part, where are we going to document the stuff?
Yeah.
Is it, it can change. You've got, is it going to be in the GRC tool? Is it going to be in Google Drive? Is it going to be in OneDrive? Is it going to be in SharePoint? Is it going to be in a notebook sitting on the shelf with dust on it? Where's it going to be?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And please don't put it in a notebook. But, you can have paper versions of stuff for, incident response stuff. Don't get me wrong. But anyway, yes, and that's another area where we run into things that shock people. Before you begin writing your policies and procedures, what is your policy and procedure for policy and procedures?
Yeah. You've already lost 50% of the people already.
But I have to have a structure for how they're written, how they're approved, how they're viewed, how they're documented, how they're audited, all of those things. That structure has to exist. And that's what governance is about. And so how often is risk reported upward? That is huge. That no seat at the table issue is something we encounter all the time. People asking, how do I get a seat at the table? Just to get them to hear me about where we are. Yeah.
You need to have a process around this. So whether it's some type of anonymous reporting tool, whether it's, your managers or middle managers bring it up in meetings. Like, if you don't ask, oftentimes they're not going to say anything. The other aspect of it is, if I've come to you one time before and I've said, here, I've noticed a problem, depending on how you respond to that is going to depend on whether I ever tell you if I ever see another problem.
Yep.
Because it don't take but one time before I go, you know what, screw you. Next time it happens, I'll just ignore it. I don't care. You don't care. I don't care. It's the same thing with your employees. They can't care more about it than you do. They're not going to care more about it than their direct supervisors and all this other stuff. They just typically not. They're going to go somewhere else. So how you handle that makes a huge difference.
And if you aren't looking, then trouble's cooking.
Absolutely.
So you need to be looking at that risk management plan. And if you are doing a regular review of your business, then, you and I carry around the risk management in our head because we know where our risks are. And we're always, kind of.
I live it. I talk about it all the time in our boot camps.
Yeah.
I perform a risk assessment on a daily basis. And it's usually right before I open my mouth.
But for the most part, everything comes back to governance if something doesn't go right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because when something fails, it had to do with governance. Somewhere down the line, we weren't looking, we weren't reevaluating, we weren't something. And I don't care whether it's the Change Healthcare thing where there was an unsecured remote access, and their policy said that they don't have those. That's what the policy said. But, let's bring down the whole sector, to its knees because your policy clearly wasn't followed. And that's, interesting that they now have people, and that was one of the big things that happened was they didn't have a cybersecurity expert on their board.
Yeah.
And they were like, why, when cybersecurity is so important in healthcare, so important to what you do, everything you do has to do with computer technology doing what it needs to do to operate the healthcare sector, yet you don't have a cybersecurity person on your board?
Mm-hmm.
That message is finally getting across. That has to happen. And if you don't have somebody that's focused on that, and let's say you have a leadership committee, and a lot of, big partnerships, that's what they do. Somebody better be paying attention to this. And now, not later. So there you have it. Who decides, who owns it, and how do we know it got done? Those are your 3 questions of governance. And if you don't have those, then you're doing stuff. That's it.
You're just doing activity.
That's it.
That's it. It's just activity.
We have a very active program. No one makes decisions about it. No one owns it. And we can't prove anything was done, but we have a very active program.
Yeah. It means something. It may not mean what you want it, but it means something.
Indeed.
So there you go, folks. All right. There it is. 550. So if you hang around long enough, you'll hear us talk about 600. Until then, for Donna and myself, remember, first of all, share this thing out. The fact that somebody told me they hadn't heard about the podcast, well, like, what? Anyway, share this episode, share the podcast out. We appreciate it. If nothing else, we have to get the word out so that we can eliminate the ignorance around this topic. Yeah. All right. We're doing everything we can to help save the world, one podcast at a time. So join us again next week. And until then, remember, for Donna and myself, the HIPAA is not about compliance. It's about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.